A lot can happen in 3 days. I think the last time I was up here for an extended period of time, I was answering the phone from Dave Bailey when we were wondering where he was back in the summer. So I think of that standing up here makes me smile. Resurrection. As Phil said, he did ask me, share what resurrection means to you. Last night at youth group, we asked the small group that we were with, that was the boys we were dealing with, to share on that. And that was interesting to see the various answers going around. They came around to me, and what came to mind at the moment was that resurrection is a permanent solution to a terminal problem. But the blood of Christ was shed for our sins so that we would not suffer a terminal ending. Having read through the Bible, knowing some of the Old Testament stories talking about sacrifice, the Israelites would bring an animal sacrifice for purification to cleanse themselves. But it grew into quite the industry because it would cleanse themselves for only so long. The bull or the sheep or the doves were done when they were sacrificed. They were done. I helped chaperone a field trip down to Washington, D.C., went to the Museum of the Bible, and they talked in there about ritual cleansing in ponds or in bodies of water that the Jews would go in to purify themselves and cleanse themselves. But they would have to return to do that again and again. When Christ died on the cross for me, he was resurrected up. All right? He did not have to die repeatedly for me. I did not have to bring a sacrifice each time because he had become that eternal sacrifice. How many of you are familiar with the movie The Robe? It's quite an old movie now, but it's played this time of year. It's much older than I am, so I've only seen it on TV and repeats. But the premise there is the gladiator, the soldier who wins Christ's robe at the crucifixion, is sort of haunted over killing this innocent man. And there are those in the movie who feel the robe must have special powers. They've heard about this Christ. And at one point, some of the Romans want to test out the power and the magic in the robe, and they kill a slave. And they say, put the robe on it and let's see if it brings him back to life. That's not a magic robe. Now, that was Christ's robe when he did something, I hate to say magical, but when he did something special for me, for all of us. The resurrection of Christ is more than providing me with a fire insurance policy, but you hear that referred to that way. And sometimes I think I need to share that message with friends to get them to start thinking about what resurrection might mean for them as it does for me. When my father was diagnosed with ALS, it was a devastating diagnosis because we knew the course ahead. I thank you all for the kind words these past couple weeks since his passing. But the family had a peace about it, had comfort in it that Dad, having passed away, was free of this bondage, but we knew where Dad was going to go and that we would be able to join him again one day in heaven because of Christ and his resurrection. And my dad never cursed God over what he had. He never said, "Why me?" he did say, why not me? What makes me any more special? And just because we have the blood of Christ does not make our road perfectly smooth. It does not mean that we don't go through trials, but it does mean that we have that grace. I was in work this week, and one of my friends I work with came to Dad's service, and I'll pat us on the back a little bit here. He said, "What was that song you guys sang during your dad's service?" Because they had the words on the screen, and people started singing other words. And I said, "That's the wonderful grace of Jesus." And he says, "We sing that at our church, and it sounds all right. But it just sounded so amazing there at your church." And I said, "Well, we know that song, and we sing of that grace." When I sing that song and think of the wonderful grace of Jesus, I'm comforted. I do know that with that resurrection, my future is secure, even if life on earth is far from it. I think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego going to get thrown into the fire, into the furnace, saying to King Nebuchadnezzar, "Look, we have full confidence that God's going to save us. And even if he doesn't, they had faith." So I pray for God's strength and for that faith in the resurrection. I'll leave it there. I do know we have a hymn coming up in which he lives, and the words there remind me also of God's resurrection and grace for me. It's for all you too, but it's for me. And how many times grace is used throughout the Bible, because while we fall short, God doesn't. And the grace of Jesus and the blood of Christ allows us to know who holds tomorrow.